I need a haircut. Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name's Aaron. I buy, sell, trade, collect, Vend, grade. This is my channel where I talk about random things in the hobby, stream of consciousness, if you will. And today's video is about, I don't know, Pokemon? Uh, uh, uh. Cosmic Eclipse has an auction that's like 4,500. Let's see if it gets paid for. What else is going on? Welcome back to the channel. Let's see. Last upload, we talked about Final Fantasy Market Watch. I'm going to talk about that a little bit today as it relates to Pokemon because I do think there's a lot of important things that translate hobby to hobby that I would like to talk about. And really, I think today's video is about the importance of doing it all. And what do I mean by that? I had this corny introduction now that has just been like the automatic thing that I say: buy, sell, trade, collect, bend, grade. It goes together nicely. If you've been watching the channel for a while, it kind of just stitched itself out when I would like, mumble these words together, and I figured out how to put them in a sequence that made sense. Um, but I say that intro as like these are the things that I do, these are the things that I've done, and you know, I think as I've gotten older, as someone who now grew up with the IP, love collecting things, love like being involved like in the community. The community word. Just having a social network of people with similar hobbies and interests. I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that like the perspective to get the complete perspective on the hobby, you need to understand or at least have done everything. And I came in back during COVID as like a pure collector. I mean, degenerate collector, someone who had no self control, you know, with that early COVID boom, who just wanted to get involved, and I spent a lot of money. And then when I realized that the best way to build a collection is actually to sell things, not to continuously buy things. That's when a light bulb went off my head, and I realized that like, okay, this is how you self sustain yourself. And you know, I, I think these days, what's interesting about making content on YouTube, I'm thankful for everyone who comes and watches, whether you're from Pokemon, whether you are from Final Fantasy or Magic, or you're a pure collector, pure investor, a reseller. It doesn't matter. I'm thankful for everyone that comes. But what's interesting from my perspective is like a lot of the comments, the commentary that you get are typically from people who are like from one specific camp or like one walk of life in terms of the hobby. You're a reseller, you're a scalper, you're not even a real collector. I think that I got no. There's an argument with someone in the comments like a few videos ago. It's like, yeah, we'll see if you're around if Final Fantasy crashes. You're not even a real fan. You even said it. I'm like, yeah, I said I'm like a mid fan. I grew up playing the games, but like I don't know the color of such and such character's clothes in this scene. It's just like I don't know. Anyway, um, I and I want to talk about this video today because what's going on in Final Fantasy is expected. If you're a Pokemon person, I'll just give you a little TLDR. There's a pretty big retrace happening on the graded card front with Final Fantasy. I won't bore you with the exact details, but some cards that went for 2,200 retrace back down to 1,500, 1,300, 1,500. Some cards in a PSA 10 were going for 1,500, 1,300. They went down to like 900, 800. And so there's a pretty substantial retrace for like the top cards. And in a healthy card market like Pokemon, right? There's enough sell through and sales volume and recent sales where price volatility is not that drastic because there's enough demand to like keep up that market price, what people are willing to pay. But when there's not enough demand and there's too much supply, typically what happens is you get some insane level of price volatility. Um, dude, right turn yield, this person waited for the person to cross the street all the way on the other side before turning, just like holding on the traffic. Anyway, um, so I predicted this in Final Fantasy. I didn't think it'd be this drastic or this soon, but it is what it is. I have to take some L's on the chin. I'm probably gonna break even on some cards, which is fine, which is okay. As long as I don't lose money, I'm happy, right? Um, but I've been trying to reflect and think about like why am I so okay with this? Because it kind of sucks. Because some of the cards I was really banking on making, one of them I thought was going to make probably like 2.5 times. It was probably going to make like 1.25, 1.5 times. It's expected. Um, and I think it really just comes down to like you when you buy and you sell and you trade, you collect and grade, and you go through the repetition so much, you see a lot of patterns, and those patterns like everyone's had that feeling where they grade a card. Not everyone, sorry. Active people in the hobby, they've graded that card and it gets like an insane premium, right? So people who grade cards, you know what I'm talking about. You check your grades, you got a 10 on this card, whatever it is, and you're like, holy crap, I wasn't expecting a 10. It's like some insane premium you weren't expecting and you sell it and you're like happy, right? But then I think, especially with graders, you've been in that position where you've like sourced the mintiest cards, or so you think. You submit them, they come back and they're like sevens, eights, and they're just like complete duds. And not only did you lose money on the card, not only did you not get the grade you were looking for, you also lost money in the card, right? And so, like a collector, a person who only just goes and buys packs and just like finishes binders, and like that's their lively, that's how they approach the hobby. That's like their livelihood in the hobby. They'll never get that feeling, right? You'll never know what that feeling is until you've done it. And the same thing applies to, you know, you're a vendor, you're buying in bulk, you're buying a big collection, you're selling a big collection. Like, I think what goes unsaid a lot is like it's not it's not the fact that you are a vendor or that you are a seller. It's the fact that you've actually had the experience to go through some of those adversities, some of those I don't know. It becomes like behavior recognition and you it, I'm not going to say it ever feels good when you lose money. Don't get me wrong. I it doesn't bother me as much as it did when I first started. Yeah, stupid story. When I first started grading, my first cards I sent was actually with CGC because during COVID, if you're around, you'll remember. But if you weren't around, PSA was backed up like 1.5 to 2 years on bulk. It was a terrible experience. So unless you sent at like the higher tiers at like 75, but I forgot what it was exactly. You were getting your cards back. So I followed what CGC was doing. And around that time, CGC, I don't know if they did like a big marketing push or whatever it was, but they had a pretty decent amount of demand, primarily because PSA was backed up. But also because their turnarounds were actually, for bulk, I think it was like 2 or 3 months. And when I first started grading, I said I probably sent my first card like 6 months after I started grading, or 6 months after I started getting back into the hobby. And I had hundreds. Like I probably sent like close to 400, 300 to 400 cards of Japanese stuff that I sourced from Japan, all the way from probably heavily played actually, to near mint. And you know, I level X's, Diamond and Pearl era, mid era, Ruby and Sapphire. Um, they call it advanced era, ADV in Japanese. Um, some vintage, not fossil and base, but like Neo Gym. Um, what else did I send? Basically, as many sets as I could. All the cards were like between Rocket, probably Neo, all the way to the end of Platinum or Diamond and Pearl. So just imagine, whatever level X cards, EX cards. But I sent literally everything that I had. And this is before I understood condition checking, before I understood like, okay, mint versus near mint versus very near. mint versus very near mint versus near mint versus like not really mint versus light play plus versus like, just like I didn't understand like how every step of the way you really had to like scrutinize the difference between like a 7 and a 10 or 8 and a 10. I just kind of sent everything. Anyway, I must have spent like $5,000 on grading fees. Miraculously though, um, I didn't end up losing too much money because some of the cards I got back, I don't think there was pristine 10 at the time, but in like tens and nines were like cards that resold for, you know, the cost of grading plus 2 to 3 times the card. So if anything, I think I probably broke even. No, I might be losing my mind here. I think I lost a little bit of money. Anyway, I remember the level of disappointment I had when I got those grades back and I looked up the comps for the cards and I realized like, oh, these cards don't even have comps because who would buy a CGC6 Charizard from Platinum? But the beauty in that though, when I did try to sell that stuff, some of it again did sell for decent. Like, a CGC6 Charizard from Platinum, the one he's flying, um, you could probably get like $50 for back then. So, all in all, it was an amazing learning experience. But I tell that story because I still remember how painful it was to this day going through the grades and just being super disappointed. Just like, what am I doing? I waited 3 months for this crap. Like, who's gonna buy this? And I got bailed out. When I had like maybe 100 or 200 slabs left, I was able to sell it to like a repacker. I forgot the exact amount, but um, it was a learning experience. But like I share that there's people out there gonna be like, "What the hell? What is wrong with you?" I'm like, ooh, that guy's bright hard. Um, I share it because yes, it is a little out there, but like if you've never collected and graded your own cards, or if you've never sold your own cards, or you've never gone through that process, you'll never have that same feeling, right? You'll never understand the level of disappointment that you would have when you grade a lot of cards and they don't come back as what you would expect. Now, since then, have I made questionable grading decisions? Yeah. I mean, I there are times where I'm just like, let's whole hog ham, roll the dice, baby. Because it's just part of the game. And you know, I, I think now is a great time as the hobby keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. There is an obsession around buying and acquiring and like trying to like I gotta beat the market. I gotta like get the best deal. But honestly, like a lot of the money that's being made right now is people selling and understanding the value of trimming down a collection and selling off things they don't want and selling the things that they bought last cycle or last set or whatever it is, right? Buying, yeah, truthfully, the ability to buy is always going to be there. But the ability to sell well, it comes and it goes. Not to say you can't sell when the market's all bare and, sets are overprinted, but if you weren't here before Surging Sparks, if you were here during the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, it was looking kind of dark. It buying the latest and greatest and like this retail arbitrage and you know a lot of the stuff that you could do today, it wasn't around before Surging Sparks. And Rip and Shippers, they still did well since Scarlet and Violet, but it's nothing like it is today. So, if I could recommend someone, if I could recommend like how do you best engage with the hobby, go back to my corny intro and try to figure out like, okay, how do I buy? Okay, I'm already doing that. Buy, sell, sell. Am I selling? What am I selling this week? What am I selling this month? And I've preached about this fellow before, Pokemon Steven. He used to go by 1 Minute Flips. He's still on YouTube. Long time Aussie Pokemon seller. He doesn't really make content too often, maybe once every couple months. But I learned so much from him early on that like the most important thing that you can do, learn how to sell, be consistent, and just constantly churn stuff that you don't want. Because there is stuff that you have. I still have. I'm like, I walked in my closet today. I'm looking at these like sealed like Japanese battle decks. I'm like, why the hell do I have? Just like it's money that's sitting there. You don't appreciate it. If you did, you would know that it's there. You would probably display it. And I learned from him that just doing that every day, that repetition. I think the advice I took from him, it's like 4 or 5 years ago. Just list like 3 times a day. Make it a habit. List whatever. Doesn't have to be anything and anything important. List it and set it at an auction. And if it ends at $10, ship it. If it ends at $50, ship it. But at least it's gone, it's ended, and it's money that you can realize that you probably weren't going to ever do anything with before. Anyway, buy, sell, trade. The trading part, I think people this is where I think vendors have the upper hand in learning how to be a vendor is when you understand that you can go back and forth between buying, selling, and trading when you're talking to someone who walks up to your table. That's really powerful. And I'll let me draft out an example, right? Let's say someone comes up, they want to trade you $1,000 card, right? And you say, actually, I only take trades at 80%. I only pay cash at 70%, right? So as a vendor, right, you have the option of saying like, okay, you want my $1,200 card for your $1,000 card? Here's the deal I'll make for you. You pay me half at 70%. So my $1,200 card, you pay me 70% in cash. Okay, cool. And the remaining balance, uh, which would be that $600, right? Um, no, sorry. The remaining balance, which would be 70% of the $1,200, quick math, $720, right? You trade me 80% at 80%. So you're effectively getting you're getting your meal however you want it, cut up in different ways. And I think that's the advancement of someone who is understanding how the hobby works. It's not just like post on eBay and then you sell. That's like for step one, learning how to sell. Step two is understand how do you construct a deal. And it's not just like buy this, sell that. It's buy this, sell that, trade this, let's buy, sell, trade, add cash, you take cash. Just like that's the value of understanding how to vend, or at least that part of the hobby, because there's so much flexibility and fluidity around like how do you put more emphasis on the things that you want in a trade? How do you put less emphasis but still get value? And you're not going to get that experience by doing that online. It's just you can, I shouldn't say that. It can be done online, but you need a persona, you need to be trusted. You need to have both parties okay that doing an online deal works that way. And like I've I think I've gotten to the point where some people I can do that, but like for random strangers, like we're asking each other, like, who do you know? Who have you done deals before? Do you have a middleman? Just like it's just way different. Um, there is like this overemphasis on consumption and buying. And again, I think this market is perfect to do nothing along those lines and not be buying. It's perfectly fine to just sit on the sidelines and say, hey, you know what? I want to prioritize selling for the next month or two. In investment content will always have you believe that if your dollar is not put to use today, you're not making enough tomorrow. And if you follow what I've said before, generally about how I believe how this market works, you can pick winners and losers. You can also time your entry. But the most important thing is you feel good about your entry in the thing that you buy. I don't know. That's it. Um, I sometimes I reflect on how did I get to this point, and really, it's the friends you made along the way. Kidding. It I don't think I really figured out where what I was doing until the beginning of last year. The beginning of last year, oh, I guess towards the end of the previous year, is when I started to get active in selling in person and vending. And, at that point, the whole hobby just unlocked itself. I saw the hobby for what it was. It was not about investing. It's not about collecting. It's not about it's not about one thing. It's about this culmination of the six different things I talk about, buy, sell, trade, collect, and grade, that lead to growth. And I think, you know, I'm not a growth mindset person. Like, people say that, like, oh, have a growth mindset. I'm kind of just like, I'm going to do what I think feels good. And I realized that in this hobby, it you can treat it like a hobby and just collect. That's fine. But a lot of the times, people who do that, you're going to have really stark opinions on resellers and flippers, investors, and you're not going to really try to understand the full picture. I think when I started to Vend, I saw the hobby for what it was, which was if you decide to grow, and growing is not about making money necessarily, it's a key part of it. It's more so about the expansion of your knowledge and the things that you have, and not holding on to things, and like improving as like a collector, improving as a grader, improving as a vendor. Like that's what the hobby should be about for people. That's what I think, because you won't it's really hard to burn out if you're focused on how do you grow what you're doing, but it's really easy to burn out where you're like, "Man, I can't collect anything. Everything's so expensive." Because that's like your only goal. When that's your only focus, it's like, yeah, you're going to get burnt out because the market price sucks. And there's not really much you can do about it. So, for me, when I get burnt out on like selling, which doesn't really happen, I should sell more. When I get burnt out on buying, I'm like, cool. I'm just gonna sit back and just maybe schedule some auctions, get some things consigned, sell a bit. I don't need to constantly deploy money. I want to, but if I get burnt out and I feel like there's nothing good to buy, that's fine. But I think the key message in that is like I've afforded myself the ability to do so. And I don't say afford as in like the money part. I mean afford as in like the brain space part. Because the drive that I think I have in the hobby is not just about collecting and not just about buying or not just about selling. It's, a very it goes back and forth. It's all these different things. And I do the thing today that'll mean the most for me or help me the most tomorrow. And sometimes, I will overspend. Sometimes I will undersell, and that's just part of it. But I'm thankful that I've been able to afford the time. Um, obviously, because you know, family is very understanding, um, to figure this out. But I, I don't know if most people will ever get to this point, and I don't think it's anything outside of like naivety, unaware. They're just unaware, or they're just stubborn. You know, and I get a lot of the content these days is about like this person's bad, filthy investor, collector crybabies, you're this, you're that. And it's like I'm the the sad thing is like I'm like all of that. Seller, reseller, collector, investor, hoarder, flipper, business owner. Like they're like, yeah, it's all me. But I think it's unfortunate that there has to be so many specific labels on how to be good or bad in the hobby. Because honestly, I think we've all done some of this to an extent. People have invested without actually thinking they've invested. People have been hoarding without realizing they've been hoarding. You flip product, whether or not you're being called the flopper, LeBron James, flipper, scalper. It's what's the point? Like, what's the point of being labeled one thing when everyone's done it? You know what I mean? I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I haven't invested. I have a lot of Sword and Shield. I gave up Sun and Moon for Sword and Shield. Right now, it's not looking like a great idea. That Cosmic Box, pray, I pray does not get paid for. I will say I have had my boxes of Unbroken Bonds auctioned with Pro Steam. One of them got relisted twice and was not paid for. And then I've heard in other people's videos how the market price is like 2,200, 2,400. I didn't say anything, but I was like, guys, that was my auction. Also wasn't paid for. So the fake market price, just so you know. Anyway, um, we've all been there. We've all done that. And I would just, if I could share one message, try to learn and do it all and don't succumb to labels or you're this or that. Do everything. Some of my best friends in the hobby, I've met through different avenues, collecting, vending, making content, honestly, um, selling, flipping, investing. They all that's how I met all these different people. Is just keeping in mind that like all these avenues are how you grow. You can stick to one, but it's gonna limit you. I remember watching guys like PokeRev and Cool Trainer Ryan in like 2020. And I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, what's going on? Like, why do people watch them? And I started watching more. I'm like, oh my god, these guys have like the coolest stuff. Like, wow, this is amazing. And then throughout the years, I'm like, wait, how did they get there? How do I get there? How do I get to that same point? I'm like, oh, it's a culmination of like being a true fan collector, a smart investor. It is part of it. A smart reseller slash flipper, someone who builds community, someone who has an online content and presence, someone who's trustable, uh, trustworthy, who people look at as reputable. Um, and that's where I've learned this from. Is you can stick to your one way, you can have your 1 year opinion, you can have your opinions on one thing and do this or that, but like the smart, successful people in this hobby that many people look up to, that many people don't realize run, 7-figure plus businesses, they are not just one thing. They are a multi-skilled, quadruple class person who approaches the hobby with an opportunistic mindset and switches between the tools that need to be used in order to grow. That's why you should buy Destined Rivals $300 booster box. I'm kidding. It's about understanding that the opportunities that you get really come down to the position you put yourself in. And if you are only putting yourself in the position as a collector or an investor or a vendor, you're greatly limiting yourself in how do you overall just grow in the hobby. Again, not about money, not about collection size. It's really about experience and skill set. I I might give the allure. I might give the aura that like I know what I'm doing at all times. I really don't. I'm figuring out as I go. I find opportunities, I tackle them. And I guess for me, this advice really is just about like, don't be rigid, be flexible, fluid, go against the tide, go against what people are doing because you're going to learn a lot, you're going to do a lot, and you're going to find opportunities that most people won't. So, you know, that's it. That's today's video. That's all I got. If you found this video helpful, leave a comment below. If you didn't, leave a comment below. Just give me the engagement. Like, comment, subscribe. That's it for me. Happy Thursday. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day. And if you're starting your weekend early, have a good weekend as well. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.